So Yogi, tell us, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Fiji.
Sometimes I just get this real feeling like, is the chain of events and of decisions that I'm making going to lead to a potential tragedy?
And how much do you love Yogi and Liam?
I love Yogi lots and Liam lots as well.
I first became interested in boats.
I grew up in Hamilton, New Zealand.
Risks facing offshore sailors are...
Was the case for the first 4 days. Is it?
The end.
The end.
I don't know if I... top of Tonga to there, 75 nautical miles. And we've got to go all the way down here to Whangarei, New Zealand. You don't always have to have paper charts, but Navionics has an area that you can't download through about 500 nautical miles of the middle. So it's just forcing us to really practice plotting out. I grew up in Hamilton, New Zealand. It was a rural area and it was actually quite far away from the ocean. It was about maybe an hour's drive.
I grew up in Fiji. It was quite good. My mum and dad worked quite a bit, so most of the time it was just me and my siblings.
It's just a bit of rain alarm. It's really forcing us to practice plotting our position just to double check, because we're not going to have good electronic charts for a little bit through the middle of this passage. So that's day one. My parents sold the family farm and we shifted to a beachside town, and my uncle started taking me out in his trailer boat on day fishing trips. And shortly after that, my parents bought me a little wooden boat and an outboard motor, and when I was 11, 12 and 13, I was all over the harbours and in the ocean fishing and doing crazy things in this little wooden boat.
I first became interested in boats when I met Peter. On our first or second date, I think he took me to a beach town and we went past a sailboat. And he goes to me, "Oh, I would love to sail around the world one day. Would you be interested?" And I thought, oh, okay, why not? Well, I don't know if this guy is for real or is he, okay, no harm saying yes for now. And here we are.
So I think we're just going to have to tell you about that sort of stuff as we go during the passage and spread it out. We're about 10 minutes from putting up the mainsail. We're just sort of cruising down the harbour. And now we're off to New Zealand. So we left New Zealand in an airliner and we're going back to our home country in a sailboat. This passage is scary, exciting, and it's only our second passage and it's another 8 to 10 day passage. So that's a little bit from me, but we're going to have to pull the mainsail up soon. And it's 4 o'clock and we're going to be sailing through tonight and getting to New Zealand before some weather smashes us.
When I was younger, have I ever thought of undertaking this sort of adventure? Hell no. I just wanted to grow up and work in a fancy corporate office and wear my high heels and tight skirt and go to work. Living on a boat and sailing and crossing oceans wasn't part of the plan.
Quite excited and nervous about the passage ahead. New Zealand passage is supposed to be quite tricky. That's what I've been hearing from other cruisers. Got a good weather window, but there's a low pressure at the end of the weather window apparently, so we have to be there on time. I'm excited, but I'm nervous at the same time, and 2 weeks ago a person died, so yeah, that does freak me out a bit. The passage from the Pacific to New Zealand is considered risky, but the reason why people consider it to be risky is because cruisers generally have been using the South Pacific southeast trade winds to sail downwind the entire time. But when you come out of that Pacific trade wind belt and down into New Zealand, where you have different weather systems, the high and low pressure systems moving from west to east. At some stage during that passage, you're not going to be sailing downwind. You're probably going to encounter headwinds.
I want to sail around the world now. There's a few reasons. First, to see all these beautiful places out there and experience different cultures and food. I think that will be really neat.
For me, probably the first thing that comes to mind is the beautiful remote anchorages, but sitting in a beautiful remote anchorage, really comfortable with a nice plate of food and maybe a nice drink out, and just soaking up the atmosphere and being really away from it all and knowing that it took so much effort and so much work to get there. And then secondly, the opportunity to video it and share it with people. Like, I know watching right now, there's somebody that just goes to work in a concrete jungle that will never have this opportunity. So to be able to become a videographer and a documentary maker and take people on this journey with us, to me feels amazing. And the other thing I like about video is it's just such a door opener. If you turn up at somebody's business and go, hey, I'm doing a travel video documentary series, we'd like to feature your business? The answer could be yes, could be no, but it could be yes. And then we get to go behind the scenes, and the camera is a tool to take us behind the scenes and see what's really going on, versus a tourist approach where you're just taking pictures out the front. You're just looking at it and moving on quickly. So yeah, it's good stuff. We were just saying it is a big day checking out of a country, and especially sort of a developed or a third world country, because you don't, like customs was having a meeting that went all morning, and we just go down there and they're still in a meeting when he turned up at lunchtime as well. So we're sitting there going, I don't know if we're going to depart today, but we wanted to depart just to make sure we really got in front of this low pressure that could arrive towards the end of our passage in New Zealand. So a friend of mine on the phone was saying that the more time we spend out here, we'll get used to different paces, but I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting a sore arm holding the camera, so talk to you soon.
Yeah.
So we just put the mainsail up and Genoa out, and we're heading towards New Zealand. Choice one, Rob. That's how we say it in New Zealand.
Definitely probably gear failure and crew failure, I suppose, would probably be the biggest risks for offshore sailors.
What scares me the most about sailing around the world is Liam getting sick on a passage or at some remote island and we don't have the health care. So the actual sailing of it doesn't scare me, because I trust Peter, I know him, he will prepare the boat and he will keep us safe. So I'm not scared of the passengers or getting sick. The scariest part for me is Liam.
Sometimes I just get this real feeling like, is the chain of events and of decisions that I'm making going to lead to a potential tragedy that I've got somehow involved in? But of course it's risky to sit on the couch. If you stay on the couch every day, you're going to die of heart disease and poor health or mental health issues. So I know we're taking a risk. And then, secondly, it's major repairs on a system or the boat if something breaks underway is probably my next biggest fear. And having the tools and parts, and maybe we'll get in on one engine or one sail, but there's sort of a bit of ego around it that the boat arrives in good condition, that I can solve what happens on passage and get us to our destination in comfort and safety. Well, firstly, there was a creaking rudder bolt and I had to climb into the engine room. I went to go to sleep and I went, ooh, that's a new noise, a very metallic noise. We're off to a very dark, moody, sort of lumpy start on a beam reach, 20 knots, but I'm taking this wind as good because it gets us to New Zealand. Poor Yogi's feeling a little bit sick, even though she had one of the good seasick pills earlier this morning. I had half also. Creaking and groaning, and I thought, oh, it's coming from the steering. And I went into the engine room and couldn't find anything wrong. So I hopped into the other engine room, the other side, being a catamaran, and still couldn't find anything wrong. So I went back to my cabin. It was my turn to be sleeping. Tried to go to sleep, and then I'm getting all the thoughts. So I still hear the noise. I'm getting all the thought feelings. Should I turn around? We're already a day and a half south of Tonga, with 7 days to New Zealand in front of us, the middle of nowhere, hundreds if not thousands of miles offshore. I'm like, what do I do? Okay, I told myself, get back in the engine room and find what's going on. I kind of felt like I worked out it was coming from the starboard side, so I got back in there. Of course, a bucket of water from a wave splashed over down the back of my neck at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, and I just stayed in there, and it turned out to be one simple bolt on the rudder arm had come a little bit loose. And while the autopilot was running and the rudder's going backwards and forwards, there's enough space in the engine bay because I left the sails up, we left the boat running, and I was able to sort of tighten up the bolt as we go, and then that noise went away and we continued on. was just such a moody sea. It was mid to late afternoon. It's just so busy getting the mainsail up, getting the boat settled into its position, checking the chart plotter, double checking the chart plotter, checking that yogi is safe. Just too busy really to have any sort of thoughts for it, just busy operating the boat really. Good morning. Quite hard to vlog when you're tired, but I'll make an effort. Last night's excitement was a creaking and metallic creaking popping sound when I went down for a sleep in the cabin coming from the engine bay and the rudders. So I spent about an hour in the engine rooms, had a little wave splash over me to find a loose bolt on the rudder system. But glad I found it. For a while I was starting to contemplate whether I should turn back.
Risks facing offshore sailors are things like fatigue, with people having lack of sleep on a rough voyage, that sort of thing. Bad weather, obviously, having to deal with breakages of gear on the boat, and just general kind of injury if somebody gets hurt or is seasick and one of the crew members goes down and puts a bit more pressure on the other people.
What went through my head when we were preparing to depart to New Zealand from Tonga? Probably just to get there, and whether we have done enough prep or whether we're going to get caught in some sort of yucky weather. That was all going in my head. And what if I'm sick and I can't do anything? It was the case with the first 4 days. On the first day of the passage, I was feeling quite yuck. We started off at the end of the low pressure, so it wasn't very smooth seas. So I was really sick and I was quite nervous and tired already on the first day.
When sailing offshore, vessels sometimes have issues with breakages, mainly because they haven't been used for a long period of time at that kind of level, I suppose.
So interesting thing in these catamarans, I'm on a beam reach and I'm thinking I want to try that track a little bit further forward to get some flap or luff out of the top of the genoa, to pull it down more versus pulling it out. So I feel the genoa in, and then just running on a beam reach on the mainsail turns the boat into the wind and overrode the rudders and the autopilots, and the autopilot beeps that it's going offline, and you're like, oh, what's going on? So without the genoa, the mainsail will just turn the boat into the wind. And because I haven't done a lot of manoeuvres and we've really just gone on a few passages and set it up in one direction, I forgot that. So turn the engines on, straighten the boat out in the direction, and then unfurl the genoa again. And with the track further forward, it has actually pulled the top of the sail tighter and that luff is gone. So I think it was successful. So the interesting thing is a New Zealander can just hop on an airline, fly to any place in the world, buy a boat and depart across oceans. There's no laws, there's no regulations. Maybe occasionally there's something sort of light locally, and we can sail a boat across our ocean with no skill, with no safety checks, no nothing. I find it both really liberating and quite scary at the same time. I was up the mast in Tonga checking the rig. Did I know how to check a rig properly? Not really, but I had a good look, I tried. And I was up there and thinking, there's nobody giving us a sign going, you're safe, Pete, you can do this. There's just whatever skills we have, whatever advice we've taken in, whatever books we've read, whatever experiences. But what really helps nowadays is you can call somebody on the satellite phone if you need help.
While crossing the passage, the part I enjoyed the most was full moon, the nights of the full moon, when the moon was out and we were sitting at the helm and watching that and the sunsets. That was the most beautiful thing, and that was the most enjoyable part of the passage for me.
At this point we're sailing close hauled, going upwind on that front part of the high, and it's really good. Leopard 48, it's not slamming too much and quite comfortable, and we're doing 7.5 knots going upwind. So the thing with the New Zealand passage is when you're in Tonga, the New Zealand part is 10 days away when you arrive at New Zealand, and New Zealand's where the bad weather is. So when you're leaving Tonga for New Zealand, you're looking at a 12 or 15 day, as you get in your prep, you're filling the boat with water, fuel, groceries, you're looking at a 12, 15 day weather prediction. and you're taking a guess at it, and you go off sailing, and as you're halfway, you're 5 days into it, and you can start to see the storms start to come across New Zealand. And that's the bit where boats really get into trouble. And the previous month, somebody got into trouble there, and their vessel foundered, and the sailor died. And we're about to do the same bit of water, the same passage. I'm much happier now because we had to go west across the map without going down towards New Zealand at all for a whole day. But now we're just starting to point down towards the top of New Zealand even more and more. I guess that's the case with sailing, that you can't always point to where you want to go, and those parts can be frustrating, but as the wind rotates around and changes, we're going to be going more and more to New Zealand.
What I thought of offshore sailing and my expectation versus how it turned out, it wasn't as bad. I was expecting for worse. Peter prepared me when we departed for Tonga that expect worse. Just expect that you're gonna die. Just aim for the worst. And anything better than that is a bonus. And I did. I was expecting really worse situations and being sick and all sorts. But after 2-3 days, I came right, and to me, it wasn't as bad.
Leaving New Zealand on an airliner and arriving back on a sailboat is also pretty fantastic. That's going to be a real accomplishment feeling. I'm also sort of feeling like, wow, I've accomplished enough in life now. Done some uni study, had my business, and sailed across oceans. Part of me is just like, yeah, I just want to hang out with a few friends and have a few barbecues for a while. But knowing me, I do like an adventure, and Yogi's the same. And we'll catch our breath for a moment after this. So we've just dropped the reef out of the main, so we've only got one reef in the main and full genoa, because the swell's dropped a bit, and that's going to give us about 6 to 7 knots through the night. If the wind comes up a hint, might give us solid 7, so we're not mucking around. We've got to get to New Zealand before the weather goes bad. But have a look at this sunset here.
So what would I advise to someone who is looking at offshore sailing? Prepare yourself, prepare your boat, have few people on the satellite phone so they can help you if you get stuck. And it's not that hard. I think it's more of a mental game than physical. It's more in your head. If you think you can do it, you will do it. And if you think, oh, it's going to be the worst case, you'll talk yourself into something, or however you want it to be.
So we've just finished day 4, and we have done 130 nautical miles. Good morning, just cooking some breakfast here. We watched Batman Begins and Batman The Dark Knight yesterday, so we burned all our time watching movies, quite good. Still being close hauled all the way to New Zealand. So far we've got 500 nautical miles to go. I was thinking before we departed, PredictWind said we were going to be reaching 80% of the time. The hardest parts of offshore sailing for me there's probably 2 hard parts. There's the workload, leave the destination where you're at. Just the preparation, getting the boat as perfect as you can do, and fueling up, weather decisions and all of that. That's a pretty big 2 weeks. Final 2 weeks before you go is huge. So you're kind of leaving tired already. Then you've got the fatigue of the passage. But the hardest part for me is arriving at a destination. You can kind of nap on shift carefully while you're sailing in certain parts of the world where there's enough space and distance around you. But it's the fatigue. Once you're approaching land, you can't nap on shift. You've got customs to deal with, you've got a strange port of entry, you're trying to time that you arrive in the morning with the sun to come up, and there's just a lot. And then you get in there, and then there's bureaucracies, it's customs officials, biosecurity officials, health officials, paperwork, question. And by then you've done, 10 days at sea, you're slightly fatigued, you've probably been up through the night, moving around coastal shipping, watching out for fishing boats as you get closer to a country. So for me, the hardest part is arriving at a country. We've got 470 nautical miles to go down to New Zealand. So conditions are still lumpy and on the nose, but we're pointing right at Whangarei, where we want to go in New Zealand. Maybe just you can trust yourself. You can mitigate risks with things like a sat phone if you're a little bit lacking in experience. And for me, I just feel like you can walk a little bit taller. It's something on your CV to be able to say you've been an offshore sailor, to say that you've been able to go to a foreign land by an international sailing vessel. Fit it out with parts and equipment, learn how to operate it, and return to your home country with it. sort of walking a bit of an inch taller, and I think that's fair enough. We should be allowed to be proud of their achievements, and I certainly feel like it's an achievement, and however there's lots of achievements to go still yet. For me, it's the feeling that it's unpolluted out there. There's no people's opinion. You're not digesting the news, so you're not getting outraged at any government policies. And unpolluted as in there's nothing out there in the Pacific. We didn't see any aircraft. We didn't see any ships. There was no rubbish, just endless blue water, day after day after day. And it's kind of a meditation when you're sitting on the helm and the waves are sloshing by and you're thinking about your distance and your timing and your charts, operating the boat, and it's also becoming very peaceful. So my word for that is it's very unpolluted out there in all aspects of the word.
Modern technology is making offshore sailing more accessible to a greater range of people because there's a lot, it's a lot easier to communicate with people now. We're using satellite technology and that sort of thing. The GPS systems have become so much more easier to use, so people are able to simply plot a course and follow that on a chart plotter. Also, weather forecasting has come such a long way, and things like the Predict Wind, weather routing, and their software for doing forecasting is so much more sophisticated than it's been in previous times.
Will I go sailing back to Tonga? No, not really. If we cross the Pacific again, if we're going to do 2 circumnavigations, we don't know. There's no reason to not go back there, but we want to keep going to new interesting places that we've never been to before.
Making all the meals in advance really helps me know that, okay, there's food there if I'm unable to do any cooking. So I made some beef curry, chicken stew, some soup, meatballs, spaghetti, and yeah, it's all in the freezer, and we just defrost it in the morning to have it for lunch and
when
dinner.
you're on a boat, on a passage, what sort of things would stop you from being able to cook?
When the weather is rough, I really struggle to do any cooking. Even boiling water for me is quite difficult. The first few days is also quite difficult for me to do any cooking. So Peter, poor thing, has to run the boat and do eating or cooking till I come right. It's a really nice day for sunbathing.
So this is what motoring right through the middle of a Pacific high pressure feels like. Absolutely beautifully calm, silky smooth water, no land on the horizon, fresh air, sun, life, peace is all out here on Catamaran Coco today.
So I've done 2 passages already now and don't feel that scared. I know what to expect. We'll be sick for the first, I will be sick for the first few days. And then I know that I will come right and I will start enjoying it. So the mental game, it's not that scary out there. Till we are in the big storm weather and then ask me then, but right now it's not, it's not scary. You just have to prepare and try to have fun. Otherwise everything is stressy. You can make everything stressy. That's it. And how much do you love Yogi and Liam?
I love Yogi lots and Liam lots as well. It's amazing to be able to bring a family on the venture and have a partner that works hard, deals with the highs and lows of this sort of adventure. And it's pretty rare. I know there's a lot of people out there watching right now that they go, oh, you're lucky you found a woman that is prepared to deal with the pros and cons of sailing around the world.
When we first arrived in New Zealand, not first arrived in New Zealand, when we first saw the land, New Zealand, how did we felt? We felt really good. It's sort of sense of achievement. We've sailed all We've sailed from Kapiti to Tonga to New Zealand. It was a great accomplishment. We felt good, tired, but good. Great, actually, not good, great.
Guess what? We're all cleared into New Zealand. We're here.